Okay, I was kind of in the mood for some TOS, so I figured I'd change things up a bit from TNG and talk about Amok Time. You know this one. It's iconic. Everybody knows this. It's been parodied, it's been referenced many times, probably most notably in The Cable Guy with Jim Carrey. It's the one where Spock gets horny. Although ever since I was a kid, I always called it Amok Time, even though it's a muck, but whatever. The episode opens up with McCoy talking to Kirk about Spock, and he's a little concerned because Spock has been acting weird. He's been irritable, and he hasn't been eating. And Nurse Chapel is trying to bring him some soup. And then this happens. Okay, so he's throwing soup at people now. And the other characters aren't aware of this yet, but Spock is really horny. He's suffering from Ponfar, which means that he needs to go home to Vulcan and mate, or he could die. Happens every 7 years to Vulcan males. And Spock is trying to explain this to Kirk without actually explaining it. He's trying to keep things private. And he says he just needs to get back to Vulcan for some rest. And Kirk calls the bridge and tells them to alter course to Vulcan. And throughout the whole conversation, Spock is holding some kind of knife behind his back. And he's like trembling. So this dude is so fucking horny. He's ready to stab somebody. That's how bad this is getting. And shortly after this, they get a message from Starfleet Command telling them that they have moved up their upcoming diplomatic mission and they have to head to Altair 6 right away. So there's no time to drop Spock off on Vulcan. And I guess they're just going to this planet to witness the inauguration of the new president of Altair 6. Doesn't seem that important, but Kirk doesn't know how life-threatening this is to Spock yet, so he tells Sulu to set a course. And after some more strange behavior, Kirk orders Spock to sickbay so Dr. McCoy can examine him. And McCoy finds out that Spock has no more than a week to live unless they get him back to Vulcan. But he doesn't know why. And finally, Kirk is able to pry it out of Spock, and he explains Ponfar and how every 7 years Vulcans have to go home and just get the poison out, basically. And Kirk promises Spock that he'll keep this confidential and that he'll get him to Vulcan right away. He FaceTimes with an admiral at Starfleet Command to request permission to divert to Vulcan, but he's denied. And the admiral is a bit of a douchebag. He insists that the Enterprise has to be at this goofball inauguration ceremony. And it's even harder to convince him because Kirk promised he wouldn't give all the details away. He would keep it a secret. But I have to wonder, what if he did tell this admiral exactly what's going on? Listen, Admiral, I got to get to Vulcan. My first officer, Commander Spock, is horny, and he's going to die if we don't get him home in time. And the Admiral would be like, what? Can't he just rub one out or something? Whack his bag? Nah, he needs the real thing. He needs the real McCoy. He's got to get in there. And I don't even know if Vulcans have bags. Well, can't somebody on the Enterprise maybe help him out? Nah, he's got to fuck at home. He's got to go home to fuck. I don't know what to tell you. Well, can't it just wait till after this ceremony on Altair 6? Nah, dude, listen to me. He's going to die in 7 days. It's like the Ring. His brain is infected with horny. If we don't get him home in time to fuck, he's going to die. He's throwing bowls of soup all over the goddamn place. It's a fucking mess over here. All right. I guess take him to Vulcan then. And there you go. Problem solved. But of course, Kirk can't say any of that because he promised not to. So he decides to disobey orders. He says Spock is his friend and he won't let the horny consume him. So he's taking him to Vulcan right now. And it turns out that it's not just about getting laid. There's a whole marriage ceremony planned to this woman named T'Pring. She has been betrothed to Spock since they were kids. So, ordinarily, they would just get married, bang, end of story. But T'Pring doesn't want to marry Spock. So she calls for the Kali fee, which means challenge. So Spock is going to have to fight a challenger of T'Pring's choosing. And the winner earns the right to marry her. Doesn't sound very logical, does it? And it's about to become even less logical because T'Pring chooses Kirk as her champion to fight Spock. And Kirk stupidly accepts this, assuming that he can just take a dive, Spock will win, and they can fucking get out of there. But it turns out this fight is to the death, which is information you'd think they would have led with. Seems pretty important, but no, they kind of kept it secret. And Spock can't even protest because he is just all fucked up. He's praying to the gods of horny right now to help him out. So he's just dead to the world right now. So now Kirk and Spock are fighting to the death. And Kirk actually holds his own pretty well because he's Kirk. But he does get his tits knocked out of his shirt. That happens. And round one ends, and they move on to round two, and they trade these more practical weapons for some ropes, some ribbons. I don't even know what the fuck these things are. Some weird strings. But before they get started, McCoy gives Kirk an injection. He says it will help him breathe easier in the thin Vulcan atmosphere. And they start the second round, and it seems as though Spock has killed Kirk. Tragic. This kind of clears up Spock's horniness. The fog is gone, and he's able to think clearly. Really, for the first time in the whole episode. And Spock speaks to T'Pring, and she explains that she wanted to be with this other dude named Ston. So the best way for her to get out of her betrothal with Spock would be to have Kirk fight him. And if Spock won, he'd probably be too disgusted with her to want her, and he'd also be hauled off to Federation prison. And if Kirk won, it wouldn't matter because Kirk would have no interest anyway, which just shows how little she knows Captain Kirk. In either case, Spock gives the Vulcan salute for the first time ever to T'Pau, the arbiter of this whole thing, and then he leaves. And back on the Enterprise, Spock says he's going to resign his commission and submit himself to the authorities for killing the captain. But it turns out Kirk is alive. I mean, they still got 2 more seasons left, plus 6 movies, so it stands to reason he was going to make it through this. But Spock is pretty surprised by this. What a great episode. It's always been one of my favorites. It's the first time you get to see Vulcan. It's the first time you see the Vulcan salute. And it really does a lot to flesh out Vulcan culture. It's just great stuff. And it's also the first appearance of Chekhov with his hairdo. But, with Spock, I'm a little surprised that the horniness didn't come back. I mean, once he knew the captain didn't die, his biological clock or whatever should still be ticking, right? It should have gone back to square one. I don't know. And I think it's just kind of sad that Nurse Chapel is always pining for Spock. I mean, she's got it bad for this dude. But she couldn't even hook up with him when he was stuck in a brain fog of horniness. He threw some fucking soup at her. I don't know, just poor Nurse Chapel. Anyway, that's all I got for now. Just remember, if your friend is so horny that he might die, just, I don't know, fake your own death. I mean, it worked for Spock, right? Just something to consider if you're ever in that highly unlikely situation. Anyway, until next time, take it easy.